The views and opinions expressed in the following paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners. Welcome to Straight Talk and Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice in making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 314-931-5877 or text your question to 84126.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your live and local St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Erin Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services, financial planner and wealth manager, and I'm joined this week by my husband, Robert Markham, our life insurance and fixed annuity sales specialist.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're without the big guy. We're without Jeff today.
He's here in spirit.
He's always here in spirit, but he is with the family of one of our former clients who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago, and he's there paying the respects not only for himself but for our whole office. So, absolutely. But today, here, we're going to help our client. We help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan with several goals in mind. First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate.
Second is to provide an income stream they can rely on so they can do all the things they want in retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to couple with their Medicare coverage. Then, when they're done enjoying their assets, we help them pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, without Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, we watch their money every single day, and that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Good morning. Again.
Good morn.
Good morn. Well, it's great to be here this morning with all of you and with you.
Earnings week is in full swing at this point. Another robust week in the markets.
Yeah, with some really nice statistics for everyone that might be feeling a little bit of the jitters around rising oil prices, as well as, we're seeing some other prices rise as well. We saw a hotter inflation number a few weeks ago, but we are also seeing that coupled with excellent earnings as we're getting through this earnings season. I believe 93% of companies that have already reported have either met or beat their earnings expectations.
I'm really surprised and heartened that the consumer has really held up.
That's right. So we'll have to, but we do know that earnings are looking into the past, whereas, we'll have to see what the future holds for us. But most companies have reported that even if they're seeing some softening, we're not seeing the ground open up beneath us.
It seems like we are quite a ways away from where we were 6 weeks ago, or even 5 weeks ago for that matter.
What a difference a month makes.
I think it really speaks to the idea of we want to be invested for long periods of time. We don't want to trade on the news cycle because the news cycle, a very short time ago, like 6 weeks, was end of the world. Well, I mean,
isn't that the case?
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the headlines were not encouraging at all.
Certainly.
So, but here we are. 6 weeks.
We are.
Look at us now.
That's right. There are several ways that you can keep in touch with us throughout the week. You can log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. You can click on the upper right-hand corner, contact us and request a coaching session, financial, Medicare, or both. Or you can click on one of those pop-up boxes that appears on almost every page that says sign up for our monthly newsletter. We call it the Coach's Corner. Rob does keep the last 18 months archived on the website for us. But why don't we talk about our new May newsletter, because we're at, day 2 of May? Already day 2.
Day 2, hot off the presses, the new Coach's Corner 2026, May 2026 edition. Got some great articles in there you're sure to enjoy. First one being advice on aging from older Americans. More than 2,500 Americans age 65 and older were asked what advice they would give to younger people on preparing for getting older. 49% said to focus on your health, and I think that's a really good place to start because health is wealth.
That is a great point.
I mean, you can have all the money in the world, but if your health is not right, I'm sure you would give up all that money for good health. So I definitely think that's some sound advice. 37% said to focus on your finances, and that's what we try and help people do every day.
That's right. I think these are both excellent points. I mean, if we're not just talking about health being a primary goal here, like you said, if you don't have your health, you really don't have much of anything, or you'd pay almost anything for it. But the other piece is you can be of average health but have extreme expenses in retirement. If we're talking about, ongoing care, the cost of prescriptions, other things of that nature. So really, I think this is great advice for young people that have the time and the runway to say we're going to maintain our health over a long period of time. We're also seeing that people are living significantly longer and making those years valuable by, maintaining your health, being continuing mobility, pieces like that. You want to have good years, not just many years. And
lastly, I'll just round that out. 24% said to focus on your outlook and your mindset, and that really struck a nerve because you can't. There's not a lot you can control except for your reaction to the things that are out of your control.
Sure.
So with the right mindset and the right attitude, you can continually turn lemons into lemonade, which is I would think part of the whole aging process. I'm not that old. I'm not quite 50 yet. And
getting close.
Right. And, there are little things that crop up. I got tendonitis in my knee and my elbow. It's like these things didn't exist when I was in my 20s. But, you just,
right.
Well, at least I can do X, at least I could do Y rather than, trying
what
to.
What did you lose?
Exactly. Because, that seems like a dead end. And our next article, the race for AI could be driving up your power bill. After nearly 20 years of relatively stable prices, U.S. residential electricity rates have increased almost 15% between 2022 and 2025, outpacing general inflation over the same period. So it was robust.
Wow.
Some consumer advocates put the increase squarely at the feet of hyperscaled data centers that have exploded across the nation. As of mid-2025, there were over 590 power-hungry data centers in use, with another 180 set to come online by 2028. So we have the almost perfect storm of events conspiring to raise rates for the consumer. We have an explosive new demand for electricity. We have an aging power grid that was never meant for the demands that it's currently having to meet. Mm-hmm. And we've also had a series of rather sizable weather events that have caused significant damage that has had to be repaired, and those costs passed on to consumers. And I'll just run through because, it caught me by surprise while I was reading the article. You had hurricane, you had the polar vortex in Texas that did.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
And it froze.
That was in 2021. 2022, you had Hurricane Ian.
That sat over Houston and dumped all that water.
Then we had Hurricane Helene. That was in North Carolina.
Oh, that's right.
Those poor people.
Oh my gosh.
And then we had the wildfires in California, 2025. So we've hit like a pretty big, I would say, regional weather event for almost every year for the past 5 or 6.
And these are not North Carolina, not as large of a population center, but Houston, the California area, those were significant population.
Exactly. And like I said, aging grid, not made for the demands that it's currently being asked, and we're adding more demand onto it. And then you have, these weather events that, like I said, all conspiring. So what can consumers do to try and keep these costs under control? Well,
go back to the wood burning fire stove.
Yeah, I didn't put that in my list of suggestions, but if you're out there chopping firewood, I mean, sure, for certain. I was thinking more of the lines of more efficient light bulbs. I was thinking
You're going to stay in the 21st century.
We're going to try. I mean, with some smart light technology that goes on and off.
Sure.
Timed solar panels, and I wrote this one down just because I live by it. Being fanatical about keeping everything at a minimum, like make sure lights are off in the room, turn off
when you leave a room.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Just try and keep everything that you're not using at an absolute minimum so we can keep those bills. And, beyond that.
I've seen, it's funny that we're chatting about this. We have a few clients that live out in Arizona, and they were talking about the expense because the weather is relatively extreme where they live. If you think about it, especially in the summer, it gets incredibly hot during the day, but then at night, because there's very little humidity, when the sun goes down, the temperature really cools off. So it really can create some issues, right? Got a lot of AC during the day. So they were telling me how at this time of the year, they spend as much time as they can with the windows open to cool the house down, and then as soon as it gets the daylight breaks, they're shutting all the windows so you could get very fanatical, as you said. That's a good word about this. But I do think some small changes can make a big impact because we don't really think about, in a lot of cases, just leaving the lights on, especially because electricity prices had remained stable for such a long time.
And in researching the article, I did see that there are rumblings in the Congress and among regulators that because of the energy demands that these data centers are going to require, that the data centers themselves or their parent companies should be on the hook for providing their own external energy source. Now, that hasn't been codified yet.
Interesting.
But given the demands of what they need and given the limitations of what the grid can provide, it seems to be that might be a direction that they go. But again, nothing seems to be finalized, except for, they are very much actively building out these data centers. That is happening.
So there must be some sort of tipping point where your share of the electricity that you're using, so you're paying for your share essentially because your usage is reflected in your bill. But there must be a tipping point where now your usage becomes detrimental to everyone that's on the grid, and that you are taking an inordinate amount of pressure, putting an inordinate amount of pressure on the grid.
We need more supply. No, that's really the long and short of it, because I don't think the demand is going away anytime soon.
Doesn't appear to be.
Right. And if anything, we're going to have more demand.
I feel like that's been one of the main stories of the last several weeks, is that many companies that have reported are now more concerned about their ability to meet the demand, and that they're limited by supply, not just because of supply chain, but then also power.
A Marshall Plan for the United States, I think, is in order.
A Marshall Plan. All right.
Okay, moving right on.
Next?
Our next article, REITs offer income and diversification. Real estate investment trusts or REITs can offer a consistent income stream and help with diversification. If you've owned broad stock funds, it's very likely that you've had some exposure to REITs. About 85% of equity funds contain REITs. The most common type of REIT is an equity REIT, which uses the combined capital of a large pool of investors to buy and manage income-producing property. Typically, REITs focus on a specific type of property that might range from shopping malls, medical centers, self-storage facilities, hotels or cell phone towers, and soon-to-be data centers.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few in the past. Popular sectors are healthcare, so that could include hospitals. Mm-hmm. But then also, more recently, long-term care facilities have become very popular as a investment objective for REITs.
as at the end of 2025, equity REITs paid an average dividend of 4.1%. That's almost triple the S&P average of 1.4%. So they do have a pretty good dividend yield. However,
let's talk about some of the drawbacks.
While REITs can be an effective income-producing asset, it doesn't come without risk.
Right.
Share prices can be volatile and especially sensitive to interest rates. REIT shares struggled in the high interest rate environment between 2022 and 2025. A lower rate environment could benefit REITs, but there are additional risks associated with investing in REITs. Some of those risks are deterioration in national, regional, or local economies, tenant defaults, critical conditions related to the supply and demand of real estate. All this is to say, before you make any changes to your portfolio and add REITs as a part of that component, you want to sit down with a financial advisor so that you understand all the risks, pros and cons involved with it, and make sure that any changes you make are going to be in line with your time horizon, risk tolerance, and, of course, financial goals.
Yeah, I think those are interesting points about the REITs. In general, what I would say is I love the newsletter. It gives us an opportunity to expose all of our listeners and readers to not only different parts of the market, different ways to invest, also different things to think about in terms of retirement planning and financial planning. But I think one of the things you might have left out a little bit here about those REITs are they tend to be relatively illiquid in most cases, meaning this is not an equity or a security that you are generally allowed to buy and sell at will. Many times it's easy to get in. However, REITs require what's called a redemption. So that means you're asking for your shares back. You're redeeming your shares back for whatever the current market price is or whatever the privately marked price is. So there are times when we're seeing this right now in the private credit market in which there are certain funds that are not allowing for redemptions. There are many REITs that have been in place for quite some time that are no longer allowing redemption. So that means your money's locked up until they're willing to give it back to you. So although they may produce some income for you, in many cases they can be decent income producers potentially, depending upon which you select. They also can have significant liquidity restrictions. So this is one of those investments that, like Rob said, you definitely want to sit down with a professional before you make a decision. And in general, REITs usually make up a relatively small component of most individuals' retirement plan, not just because of what we talked about, but also because they tend to be highly targeted and are real estate specific.
I've never knowingly owned one.
Yes, and so it's a little different, right? If you happen to own a piece of a REIT inside of a mutual fund, index fund potentially, that you are relying on the expertise of the manager that you theoretically hired when you purchased the mutual fund, or you're relying on the expertise of the fund company at the ETF level. That's a little different, especially they're making that decision. They're working with different amounts of liquidity. Even if your mutual fund holds a REIT, you are still able to redeem your mutual fund. You can buy and sell those. Now, there may be charges involved, but you always have your liquidity.
Absolutely.
In those types of investments.
No, definitely want to sit down with someone before we go ahead and decide that REITs are the way to go.
Right.
And our last article, what can you learn from your tax return? Tax season is behind us, but don't stuff that tax return away in the drawer just yet.
Right, you already paid, so the pain is over.
There's a bunch of could be useful information on that return that could help you streamline your finances. For instance, are you contributing enough to your retirement accounts, and is your retirement on track?
This is a great question that I always encourage everyone to ask their tax preparers or ask the tax software that you are using, which is if I'm eligible to make additional contributions. So first you want to make sure you're eligible. If you're eligible to make more pre-tax contributions, how much, if you contribute the maximum, if you have the cash available, how much will that reduce my tax liability? So at the end of, when people are doing their taxes for the previous year, in many cases, you are still able to make Roth and traditional IRA contributions up until the time of filing. So all the way up until April 15th, you can make a contribution for the previous year. It may be helpful. Now, you are going to lock that money up in the IRA account if that's where you end up making the deposit. However, at least that's going to be your money versus just turning it over to the government in the way of taxes.
Absolutely. Are you withholding the appropriate amount?
Right. Are you finding yourself aggravated more so than you need to be in April when you file your taxes?
Do you owe an inordinate amount of money? Exactly,
in the sense that you already paid throughout the year. You've been doing withholding, but it's not quite enough. So now you're writing an additional check along with filing your return. Maybe it's time to make...
Or on the other side of that, what if you're getting a massive return? So now you've basically given the federal government an interest-free loan.
Right. Is that really the direction? Is that really how you would like to put your money to work during the year? So your tax return is an excellent opportunity to course correct for the current year. We're not even quite halfway through yet, so there is opportunity to make adjustments both in the short and long term.
And we just had a comment come through and it said some REIT ETFs are paying 13 to 14% yield. We've seen that.
Sure. Absolutely. You just want to make sure that it's a well-balanced part of your portfolio. You also want to check into how you are receiving that yield, because in some cases you're receiving it based off of money you've already contributed. So if a REIT is not necessarily producing the income that it needs to meet that yield, in many cases it might give a return of investor dollars, which is essentially just decreasing the net asset value of the REIT itself, returning some income but it's returning income to you. So instead of, for example, if you have a dividend paying stock, sometimes you see a little drop in the stock price when they announce the dividend and release it, but then it usually goes back up to where it was. So you are not only receiving benefit by income, but you're also seeing asset appreciation. In some cases with the REITs, which is why you want to do your research before you make a selection, you will see the net asset value decrease but not go back up again. It'll eventually go back up, maybe based on the market, but it's not going to react as quickly. So you'll want to be careful with that too.
And we encountered a situation much like that this past week.
Right. So we are always evaluating securities that clients bring to us, because most of the time we are not the first advisor that our clients have, and in almost all cases we are not the first interaction with finance that our clients have had. So they come with things, life insurance, annuity products, REITs, other investment vehicles, and we take we're obviously going to take the time to evaluate everything that's currently in the portfolio and make sure it makes sense to keep it moving forward.
Absolutely. And that is your 2026 May newsletter in a nutshell. And just as a reminder, you can get the last 18 months on our website, and we've got a lot of other fun stuff there. We got webinars. We got a whole host of a treasure trove of content, if you will.
It's
not quite Netflix, but you might find it enjoyable.
There are no commercials.
No ads.
No ads. Why don't we take our first break of this hour? When we return, we'll be here to answer your questions and get into some of our content, so don't touch that dial.
This is the Big 550 KTRS St. Louis, Alton, Valley Park, St. Charles, and the world.
Streaming live at KTRS.com.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Hey, it's Heidi, and I feel very lucky to love where I live. And I know Lauren Risley feels the same. And her team at Lauren Risley Realty wants you to experience that same great feeling. One of their mottos at Lauren Risley Realty is love where you live or move. Dream homes are their specialty. Actually, they do a lot of things right, because when you buy or sell a home, it's not just a transaction. What the Lauren Risley team does is build relationships, and I've seen that firsthand. So have plans to buy, sell, invest, or just have a question about any of it? Call Lauren Risley Realty, 314-775-0684. That's 314-775-0684. You can also email Lauren at hello@laurenrisleyrealty.com.
Can I get serious for a moment? Something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is my front yard and taking care of your front yard. Because when you drive by someone's house and it's full of weeds, you think to yourself, oh man, it's very, very simple. You know how much I love to pretend to be a yard dork. You know what I use? Fertilome. I go to fertilome.com and I type in my zip code, and a whole host of local independent lawn and garden dealers show up. I buy the crabgrass preventer plus lawn food. It's the spring application. I get it down on my yard as soon as possible, and that greens up my yard and keeps the weeds away. So it makes me look like I know what I'm doing. But really, all I'm doing is getting Fertilome and putting it on my front yard. And that will take care of my yard for many, many, many weeks, and it go a long way to having the greenest yard in the block. So this spring, you want to green up your yard and get rid of the weeds? It all starts at Fertilome or fertilome.com.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Welcome back, everyone. Straight Talk on Retirement.
On the Big 550 KTRS.
That's right. We're here. We're live. We're local, ready to answer your calls and text messages. So if you are getting ready to retire, already retired, have questions about rollovers, change of life events, we're here. 314-931-5877, or you can always send us a text on the text line 84126.
Absolutely. We got some great texts that have come on the line, and we have two texts that basically kind of resemble each other. I'm going to combine them because they both work well. And our texters write, how often do you rebalance your clients' portfolios, monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually? And our second texter wanted to know if market declines or run-ups change our rebalance strategy. So very similar questions.
Two really good questions.
Exactly.
So we mechanically rebalance our client portfolios 2 times a year, really kind of midsummer time and towards the end of the year. That's also the time that we take to evaluate client portfolios. So we're going to make sure that our models are still configured the way that we want them to be for the upcoming 6 months. So at the end of the year, we're looking for the first 6 months, and then mid-year, we're looking for the back half of the year. When we see changes in the market, usually what we're seeing is a rebalance has happened for us. So if we look back to end of February, when not only were we in the midst of a tech pullback, which really started last October, but it was accelerated and then spread through the rest of the market when we began the conflict in Iran. We saw a pretty significant pullback in the market, nearly 10% on the S&P. But if we look below the numbers, especially on the NASDAQ, some companies, big name companies, were off 25, even up to 50%. So we've seen pretty dramatic changes to the market over the last 6 to 8 months. The rebalance happened for us, right? In that particular
The market helped us.
The market helped in that situation. But the really interesting piece is that if we look back just prior to our rebound, so if we look back just 4 weeks ago, the S&P 500, if we looked at an equal weight, so if we took every company and gave it an equal portion of the S&P 500 versus how it's reported now, so all of our major indexes, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow, are all weighted, which means based on a company's market cap or the size of that company, it's going to change the proportion of the index that it makes up. an equal-weighted S&P 500 was outpacing the S&P itself. And why is that? Because tech makes up such a large component.
It drowns out value.
Exactly. So, armed with those facts, at the beginning of this year, we decided that when we were doing our rebalancing, that we were going to follow what the market had been doing. When we get to summer, we're going to take a look as well. But really, what's happened since we did our first rebalance at the beginning of the year, we saw a pullback and then a recovery. So mechanical rebalances take what my dad likes to call the animal spirits out of decision making. Because if we keep what we can consistent, this almost goes back to our idea, to your comment about mindset in the newsletter. We are always attempting to control the things that we can. We cannot control the market. We cannot control the forces that impact the market, but we can control our behaviors. And so creating a systematic time to rebalance accounts, a systematic way to withdraw money from accounts if you happen to be making withdrawals, is probably going to serve you best long term. Because we don't want to get into the habit of thinking now is the time to take extra money because the market is up, or now is the time to stop pulling money because the market is down. You didn't live your life that way while you were working. You didn't say, I'm not going to take that vacation because war broke out in Iran. I mean, unless I guess you were going somewhere in the Middle East. You're still taking your vacations, enjoying your life. In retirement, we want you to have that same feeling, and that things are going on in the world, maybe things are going on in the market, but your plan is long term. So that means the things that you do day to day should not have extraordinary impacts on that long term goal.
Yeah, reordering and rebalancing your portfolio is a natural event in the course of the life of the portfolio.
Right.
To be sure, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be trading on news cycles. We don't. I mean, because if you just think through the roster of events that we've had to live through the last 5 years, if you try to time the market or move in and out, with the confluence of events, you could really find yourself without a chair when the music stops, so to speak, and missing out on I'll just go back 5 weeks ago. No one predicted that this is where we'd be 5 weeks henceforth. Mm-hmm. War is not wrapped up. Its hostilities have stopped, but we're not anywhere.
Oil's still over $100 a barrel.
And the Strait is still closed, but yet, we're in a nice recovery right now. I mean, so, if you look
and that's a great example.
If you looked at the news headlines and you looked at the two have diverged. But, again, this is not uncommon, and this is why we advocate being in the market invested for long periods of time.
Right. I think you're making an excellent point, which is truly that sometimes our feelings, both personally or maybe we're in an election year as well. The midterms are coming up, and we obviously just left an election year with the presidential election and had the opportunity to talk to many clients about this. Sometimes our feelings as individuals or our feelings as citizens of this country are very divergent from what the market is doing and what the market is thinking about. So, of course, many of us are concerned about what the midterms are going to look like. How is that going to impact decision making for the next several years in our country? We've got a lot of unanswered questions. Maybe the market reacts to that when we get closer to the midterms, or maybe that is more personal turmoil or national turmoil that we're feeling that's not necessarily going to be impacted by the market. Same thing with Iran. We saw an initial reaction because when a hot war breaks out or a hot conflict, that usually does create uncertainty. But then the market now decides that it's going to start looking past where we are because we've seen at least an abatement of hostilities for the moment. So now the market wants to decide what is next. We're reading current headlines. You don't want to make decisions on the day's headlines. Our goal is always to not only plan ahead for your needs, but plan ahead your portfolio, just like you said, Rob, being invested for long periods of time. So it's more important your time in the market than timing the market. So we don't want to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. We want to look long-term, and that's how we want to make our decisions.
And, no one can stop the big wheel from turning.
Certainly not.
And there'll be another, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, but I feel pretty confident in saying there will be another conflict somewhere at some time.
There'll be another pullback, too.
There'll be another pullback. There'll be another recession. Mm-hmm. There'll be interest rate drops or hikes, there'll be a government shutdown. All these things are like known knowns.
Sure.
I mean, we don't know when they'll happen, but they will happen. They will bring volatility, and we won't enjoy it while it happens. But like a thief in the night, you never know when that volatility will end.
That's right.
And using the last 6 weeks as an example proves that.
Good point. Absolutely. All right, and just prior to the show last weekend, we received a text message that we didn't have the opportunity to get to. It actually came through my email, so I misspoke. It was an email that we received. And our emailer writes, I received a beneficiary Roth account when my mother passed away. That was in 2014. But I'm not sure what the annual check I receive requires full payment of, I'm not sure if the annual check I receive requires that I liquidate the account within 10 years or if I'm just receiving a required minimum distribution. Can you explain if I need to liquidate this account? So this is a great question, and it has led to some confusion because the Secure Act did change the rules for non-spousal beneficiaries of IRA accounts and Roth IRA accounts that requires them to liquidate within a 10-year period or the 10 year after the 10 years from the date of the person's passing that you inherited the account from. If you are already the owner of a beneficiary IRA prior to the Secure Act, your rules didn't change, which means you are only required to take the required minimum distribution from the beneficiary IRA or Roth account. It's tied to your age, not the person that you inherited it from, and you'll be able to continue to make those distributions on an annual basis. You're not going to be required to liquidate the account. Now, whomever inherits that from you will then be, unless it's your spouse.
I love how you assume that it's just going to live in perpetuity.
Well, if it's...
Yeah, it could.
We haven't had the opportunity to see many multi-owner beneficiary IRAs. However, because before the Secure Act was passed, if you were a non-spousal beneficiary of an IRA account, so you received it from mom or dad prior to the Secure Act, aunt or uncle, grandma or grandpa, if you were only taking the required minimum distribution and that's it, there's a very decent possibility that, just like along with the rest of your assets, that you would be passing that on. And if you inherited a beneficiary IRA prior to the Secure Act, you become the next owner in the list. And funny enough, everyone's name stays on it. So the original owner's name stays on it.
The beneficiary and then the beneficiary of the beneficiary.
That's exactly right. Stays on the account. And it would, theoretically, you could keep passing it down. Now, anyone who inherits that beneficiary IRA is going to have to liquidate it within 10 years. So unless the third owner of the IRA passes away in less than 10 years, most likely we're not going to see multi-owners of beneficiary IRAs any longer. And it's really, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the Secure 2.0 Act the Secure Act rather, it really put the handcuffs on because now you have 10 years.
That's right. And really interesting, it's created some very interesting planning opportunities, one of which is with the Roth IRA accounts, and I'll use this example because of our texter, which is if you originally inherited a Roth IRA prior to the Secure Act, you had to take required minimum distributions from it, which isn't a huge deal because it's non-taxable money even to you.
I like the idea of having to take required minimum distributions, but getting the stretch as opposed to
having to liquidate in 10 years,
or no RMDs, but you have to liquidate in 10 years. Like I would rather.
You stole my thunder here.
I'm sorry,
because I was going to lead up to that, which is you only had to take the required minimum distributions. Maybe you took more because it was tax-free money, so you could pay down debt with it. You could refill your savings account.
And you had a good chance of growing back that which you took.
Right, because there was no loss. You had to sell the securities to get the cash or whatever you were owning inside of it. But when you received the money, there was no loss in taxes.
No erosion.
Exactly. But now, if you inherit a Roth IRA from a family member that's not a spouse, and they were not RMD eligible quite yet. Well, actually, because it's a Roth, they never had to take RMD. You don't have to take a dime from this account until the 10th year.
And that would be how, I would look at it.
Because you allow it to grow tax deferred. It keeps growing and growing while it's inside of that account. You don't pay taxes on it. Then when you take the money out, it is tax free. I like to say tax deferred inside of the Roth only because you do have to meet certain requirements. Beneficiary IRAs do not have the 59.5 rule, nor do they have the 5 years of holding those funds to be tax free rule. But for other Roths, you do. So I just call it tax. I consistently, just to be consistent, call it tax deferred. But you're right, growing it without any tax liability, receiving it in that 10th year, no tax liability, or at any point throughout those 10 years, you can pull as much or as little as you wanted. So it really actually creates a situation where you can let it ride for 10 years. Yeah,
you want to, my way of thinking would be you want to preserve the tax advantage nature of that account for as long as possible. Now, they've given you the countdown clock of 10 years, so that means 11 months, 3 weeks, 6 days, how many hours? But yeah, that's cutting it maybe a little bit too close. But you guys get the idea. You want to make that 10 years as valuable as possible by keeping the money, I would think, where it is.
Or, that's, as you were saying that, it led me to think about something, which is we often talk about beneficiary traditional IRAs because they do have tax consequences, right? Everything that we pull from an IRA account, if you are the owner or a beneficial owner of the account, is going to be taxable to you at your tax rate. So what if you've got the Roth beneficiary IRA and you're still working, but you don't have quite enough in your budget is set that you're making your 401k contribution. So, let's say you're making $70,000, $80,000 a year, but you're not quite getting to that the maximum 401k contribution. You're putting a little in. Well, you could take a non-taxable event, which is making distributions from a Roth IRA account, and make them actually tax deductible for you. You take the money out of the Roth to live off of, and you increase your contributions to your traditional 401k, which is a tax deduction for you. So you're living off Roth money that you inherited from a family member, and you are getting a tax deduction on your salary because you're putting you've increased your contributions to your 401k. So there are sometimes the easiest option is a good option, but it might not be the best option for you. So if you are inheriting money, especially if it's inside of a qualified account, a Roth or a traditional IRA, definitely sit down with a financial professional to have a conversation about what's the best way not only to integrate this money into my portfolio, but create a plan for this money in my portfolio. We're not just talking about what did mom or dad own inside of it and should we keep it. It's what did they own inside of it, should we keep it, and how do we utilize this money moving forward? What is
the best strategy? What are my goals? What are the rules?
Right.
Like sitting down with someone just to get a basic lay of the land, it probably not going to cost you anything, but could end up costing you a lot if you don't do it.
Certainly. And if you have more questions than Rob, you can always give us a call, 314-931-5877, or send us a text, 84126 on the text line. Why don't we take our second break of the hour?
Let's do it. So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more of our stories and your calls and texts right after these brief messages.
This is the Big 550 KTRS St. Louis, Alton, Valley Park, St. Charles, and the world.
Streaming live at KTRS.com.
I'm Farmer Dave, and here's my good friend and owner of MasterCars Inc., Alex Rosenberger, with today's hot MasterCars Inc. deals.
Thanks, Farmer Dave. We are in our peak selling and buying season right now. I'm paying top dollar for pristine, low-mile cars and motorcycles, especially Corvettes, Porsches, sports cars, and luxury cars. I'll buy classics, too. Hop on our site and submit your vehicle. Downsizing, estate liquidation, we'll even buy entire collections. If you're in the St. Louis area, I'll come to you and inspect, make an offer on all your vehicles if they're in great condition. You can submit those through our site, too, mastercarsinc.com. We are buying, selling, and trading every day for 3 decades.
So rev that motor and point your car in the direction of MasterCars, Inc. and buy or sell today. 4100 Namioki Road in Granite City, or visit MasterCarsInc.com to get more details. That's MasterCarsInc.com.
This is Erin, Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email at Erin@jblfinancial.com to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Kirkwood Florist has been a family-owned florist and gift shop since 1951. For over 70 years, Kirkwood Florist has been delivering extraordinary floral experiences every day for every event. Kirkwood Florist has an award-winning design team, friendly customer service and logistics staff, and a great gift shop. They offer same-day, fast delivery to most St. Louis areas if in by noon, with fresh flowers, plants, and unique gift items. Kirkwood Florist, family-owned since 1951. KirkwoodFlorist.com.
Now, back to Straight Talk on Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Welcome back, everyone, to Straight Talk on Retirement.
You're live and local.
That's right, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. So please call in 314-931-5877 or send us a text 84126 on the text line.
And you know, I received a text last week, right before we were getting off the air, and I didn't
have the chance.
Didn't have a chance to get to it, so I wrote it down. So if our texter is out there, we didn't forget about you. We just getting to you a week late, unfortunately. And our texter writes, "Good morning. I would really like to buy some life insurance on my parents. Is this advisable?" And I love the idea of doing it, but
so when we are talking about insurance, and this is funny because, you know, where my mind immediately went was buying the life insurance policy on someone that, you know, is going to pass away or something along those lines, you know, like trying to get over. And what we have to consider is when we're looking at life insurance is something that we call an insurable interest.
Gotta have it.
Which means there is a reason that we need life insurance on this person. And for anyone that's applied for life insurance, you've probably seen that there are financial questions inside of a life insurance application, which can sometimes be confusing. Sure, it's a financial product in the sense that you're going to pay the premium, and eventually someone's going to receive the death benefit.
Yep.
But it's also a life product, right? There's health questions involved.
Absolutely.
The financial questions in a life insurance in a life insurance application are all centered around: does the person who is going to own the policy, so the owner of the policy, have an insurable interest on the insured person? So we think about spouses. Naturally, you have an insurable interest on your spouse, especially if we're considering that person to be either the primary breadwinner or just an income stream that's required. We used to think of the primary breadwinner because maybe we used to live in a place where one person could go to work and maybe someone else stayed home for quite some time.
This is going to sound, I don't know what, but could the texter claim that, you know, there was a financial interest because of salary, living situation?
Certainly could be that, you know, if we have many clients who are part of the sandwich generation, they may have parents and also their own children living in the house with them.
I'm not trying to muddy the waters. I just,
sure.
It could be a little bit cloudy. You know, I'm not trying to make it cloudy, but like you said, with the sandwich generation and family structures being a little bit different than they've been in the past, I don't know that he wouldn't get in under the tripwire.
But also the other thing is that we would have to consider the financials of this, because if we're looking at, if this is an adult because they have enough money potentially to pay a premium, because that's, life insurance is an expense. The older that you are, the more expensive life insurance becomes, the more difficult it is to qualify for life insurance. And the insurance companies have an option there for you, though, which is called tabling. So you might not be insurable as what we would call standard or preferred, which means you get the best rate available. You could be tabled, which means we'll offer you coverage, but you're going to have to pay a little bit more for it because you're risky for one reason or another.
And the benefit may not pay out till you cross a certain threshold.
That's also true a certain amount of time. So it may not make financial sense to purchase a life insurance policy on your parents, which is usually why we don't see that.
I love the thinking of our texter. I really love the outside the box nature of it. But like you said, you have to have that insurable interest, even with the sandwich generation and things being a little bit different. Don't know that would get you in under the wire. Don't know that it wouldn't.
And also we have to look at the financial payoff here, because it always sounds nice, a large death benefit at the end of the day, but these things have a cost and they become more and more expensive.
It's not unreasonable to believe that his mom or dad could be 20, 30, even 40 years older than him.
Certainly.
That price to insure them at,
Well, I think when we were, just to give very rough numbers in general, I believe we're running quotes for our clients for varieties of reasons. So we do get to see an idea of what the numbers look like, and a standard non-tobacco, so no smoking, chewing, anything like that. For a 65-year-old, I think for $100,000 of life insurance is running about $3,000 to $4,000 a year in premium. So we can extrapolate that out to determine, how much insurance are you truly buying and how expensive could it truly be.
10 years of premium is $40,000. And premium so goes up every year. I'm not.
Well, not all premiums go up every year, right? Because with life insurance, a lot of times we've got stable premium over an extended period, over a certain amount of time. But nonetheless, so although it might be possible, it might not be the most. It's a clever idea. I just don't think we thought it through till the end.
We love clever ideas, though, and we love exploring them.
That's right.
And our next texter writes, in your client portfolios, do you keep a percentage of dry powder, i.e. cash, on the side in case opportunities present themselves? Great question.
This is an excellent question. So, in general, our attempt is to keep our clients as invested as possible because we charge a fee for the assets that we manage. So, holding large amounts of cash or even sizable amounts of cash for extended periods of time is not in our client's best interest. However, if we do see opportunities, we are often looking at the portfolio and saying, is there somewhere that we can take from that is either holding water or maybe already had some gains? We want to move on to something else. Or is there something lagging that we think this new opportunity might present itself for a better one for us? So as an individual investor, it's always a great idea to have some dry powder, or, if you're working with an advisor, maybe holding on to your savings until you say, hey, I've got some cash available. Tell me, advisor, when you have some ideas to put it to work immediately for you. So I think as an investment professional that charges fees, we have to look at the portfolio and how we access dry powder a little differently than if you're either managing your own assets or you're holding on to them before you turn them over to the individual that's managing them for you. Because we do need to balance not just our investment opportunities, but also the cost of investing when we're working with clients.
Absolutely. And our next texter writes, says, good morning, guys. Love the show. This may seem like a goofy question, but how often do your clients change their beneficiaries? That's
a great question.
It is. And it happens more often than you might think, and not for reasons that are bad. But, we have a lot of clients that have additions into their families, and they want their beneficiaries to, they want their documents to reflect these new additions. So in many cases, we're changing
Positive updates.
Positive updates. Unfortunately, Jeff is at a funeral today. But sometimes our clients leave us, and we have to sit down with their beneficiaries and get things titled right and move money into their beneficiary account. So it is a process, and there's never a cost to change your beneficiaries. You can change it as much or as little as you like. And when I go into a review with someone, with Jeff or my wife, the first thing I say is, I hand them the beneficiary designation, say, hey, does this reflect your wishes still? Is there any changes that we need to make? Because if there are, it's real easy to do. It's just, a little bit of paperwork, send it on in, and, it takes effect.
That's
and you
right.
know what else takes effect?
What's that?
Our second hour of Straight Talk on Retirement, right after these brief messages.
The views and opinions expressed in the following paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners. Welcome to Straight Talk and Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice in making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 314-931-5877 or text your question to 84126.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Welcome back, everyone, to hour number 2 of Straight Talk on Retirement.
Our smart choices about your healthcare segment. Because you care, we talk Medicare.
I love it, and I want to make one quick announcement before we talk a little bit about Elliot and Sarah. In addition to the website, jblfinancial.com, there are other ways that you can keep in touch with us throughout the year, one of which is we attempt to host a quarterly webinar this quarter, May 7th, so just next week, May 7th, at 11 a.m. We are going to be hosting a webinar talking about the very thing that was in our newsletter this month, the opportunity that our tax return presents to us for not only the upcoming year, but for planning in retirement. So if you've already signed up, you'll receive your link in the morning, the night before, in the morning of May 7th. If you'd like to sign up, just head to jblfinancial.com, but hit jblfinancial.com/webinars. Or if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can always email Robert at jblfinancial.com. We'll make sure that your sign-up request is recorded so you're added to the list. Or you can always just email us through the website in the Contact Us section. If you'd like to join us, May 7th, that's next week at 11 a.m.
All righty.
But let's talk about Elliot and Sarah.
Let's. Elliot and Sarah called about starting their Medicare benefits last week. Both are turning 65 in June, and that's going to be their initial enrollment period. That's a 7-month period in and around your 65th birthday.
Okay.
But Elliot and Sarah both plan on working until normal retirement age, which for them is just shy of...
which is 67.
Correct. And Sarah has had coverage through Elliot's plan for over 25 years. Elliot is a Boeing engineer and well over 20 employees there. Elliot said he heard that he did not have to take Medicare, but he wanted to make sure because he's also heard that if he didn't take Medicare, he would be penalized. He also wanted to know if he maybe perhaps could get a better deal than what he had at work. He currently pays about $460 for both him and his wife.
Okay, so they've got quite a few questions here to start things off. Before we get to should they take Medicare, which is the main question, do Elliot and Sarah have to take Medicare?
They do not. They are working.
Elliot's working.
And Sarah is working as well, and they're both on his healthcare insurance. And because Boeing has over 20 employees, and because they're both on that plan, that is credible coverage, so there would not be any penalties involved by them staying right where they are.
That's right. So Medicare says that when you turn 65, you need to either enroll in Medicare or already have a plan that you're eligible for. So that means, like in this scenario, the eligibility comes from being employed. That would be Elliot. Being married to an employee. That would be Sarah. And then working for a company that has more than 20 employees. Medicare says that you have to have coverage that's as good or better than itself in order to not be fined for not taking Medicare at 65. So if you're still working like Elliot, or you're married to someone that's still working like Sarah, and you have credible coverage through work, you are not required to take Medicare at 65. There are no penalties assessed against you, right?
Correct. But if on the, just reversing the story a little bit, say he was working for ABC Aircraft Company that only had 10 employees, at that point, you'd be underneath the criteria of that 20 minimum, and at that point...
At that point, we definitely want to sit down with someone, because ABC Aircraft Company is allowed to ask you to leave the plan if there are less than 10 employees. You can say, maybe it's time for you to take Medicare. More than 20 employees, they cannot do that. They cannot ask you to leave. Also, less than 20 employees, you could run into the situation where you can stay on the plan, but what happens is your employer's benefits become secondary. They are not primary. It should be Medicare becomes primary. The employer plan becomes secondary. This is if you're still working with, but for a company with less than 20 employees. So what happens is you have a claim. Well, let's say it's an easy claim, like a $10 copay to the primary. You're not going to notice that your coverage is secondary to Medicare because you owe $10. So you'll pay $10. Let's say something more significant happens and you are admitted to the hospital. Well, the way that it's going to work is the provider, so the hospital, is going to bill Medicare. Or actually what's going to happen is they're going to bill your health insurance plan through work. Work's going to say, this person's 65 years old, they're eligible for Medicare. They're going to send your claim to Medicare. Medicare is going to say, this person's not enrolled in Medicare.
Oh, no.
So when the claim comes back to your employer, your plan through work, you're going to owe what Medicare would have paid. Then the insurance company is going to pay what it thinks it should pay based on what Medicare has paid and what your plan says. So let's say you have a 90-10 plan. 90% is covered by the insurer, 10% is required by you. Medicare is an 80-20 policy. Medicare should have covered 80% of whatever the actuarial value of the claim is. You don't have Medicare, you owe that. The health plan is going to come in and pay the last 10% because it's a 90-10 plan. So Medicare paid 80. There's still a 10% liability left as far as the insurance company's plan is concerned. They'll pay that. Then guess what? You get the bill for the last 10% because that's what you would have normally owed on the plan. So you're creating a hole. That's only if you are over 65, still working, but for an employer that has less than 20 employees. That's not Elliot and Sarah's case. So
not at all.
So they have more. They really have more options, which is we don't have to take Medicare, but now the question becomes, should we take Medicare?
Right, and to get to those questions, we had to go through some medical questionnaires. And, going through their medical questionnaire, Sarah had a relatively clean questionnaire. She takes no prescription. She sees her primary care physician once a year for a checkup. Elliot, on the other hand, he has a little bit more health needs. He was recently diagnosed with Crohn's disease and prescribed Humira, and he's also a diabetic and has some early signs of arthritis. Nothing major, but a little bit going on more than Sarah.
And just to give everyone everyone that is not a current Medicare client or doesn't listen to us very frequently, our Medicare questionnaire is exactly what Rob just described. Who are you seeing? What prescriptions are you taking? And then we have a little note at the bottom that says, is there anything else you'd like to let us know? And so what that will do is, Kelly, our office manager, sends that out to everyone prior to your visit with Frank or Rob, so that way they can be prepared for the chat before you come into the office. And that's going to help lead them to what the best decision is for you. And so in Elliot and Sarah's case, we were kind of doing not just a two-way comparison between Medicare Advantage and a supplemental plan, but now we've added the employer plan into the mix as well. So where does it make sense for them?
Absolutely. And he has very minimal prescriptions costs, as most of his medications are generic, and he pays about $5 for most of them. He does get, and this is the second or third time I've seen this, he gets Humira for free through a manufacturer's discount, which I think is pretty cool. And it's like the second or third time I've seen it now.
Yes.
So I've definitely noticed it, and it's always, the client always loves when they get that.
Many of the higher-priced specialty, name brand, whatever you'd like to call them, medications, manufacturers do offer discounts. However, discounts we're about to find, I won't steal your thunder.
Unfortunately, Elliot will lose his manufacturer's discount when he comes on to Medicare.
The reason for this is, and this is going to be true of almost every manufacturer discount that we've encountered, public coverage disqualifies you from the ability to access the manufacturer's discount. Medicare A and B are public coverage. They're offered through the government, so it's going to kick you out of the manufacturer's discount.
When Elliot does decide to onboard himself onto Medicare, when he finally stops working, good news is that the donut hole is over. So while he will lose his manufacturer's discount for Humira, we know that all
the total cost
of your prescription drugs in any 1 year right now cannot be above $2,100, provided that your drugs are on the formulary, and in his case, Humira certainly would be.
So when Elliot does decide to retire and comes back to see you, you'll just have to choose a plan, be it Medicare Advantage or a supplement with a prescription drug benefit that includes Humira on the formulary. And we know that most likely he's going to hit that max on the drug side of things. That if it were this year, it'd be $2,100. So if Sarah and Elliot were working with us on the financial side of things, we'd say, well, we just got to make sure that we add an additional $2,100 a year into their financial plan, because it's an expense they didn't have before. Now they're going to have it.
Right. And, we decided to delay Elliot's Part B and just take Part A for right now due to the drug costs. I mean, since he was getting Humira for free, there's no need to join Medicare and be subject to the max out-of-pocket of $2,100. Why do that for a year of a year supply of Humira? And I don't know that it would come to that, but why pay anything towards it when right now you're getting it for free?
And honestly, there's really no need for him to sign up for Medicare Part A either. We wouldn't want to, we don't want to, right now, Elliot and Sarah are not using a plan that has a health savings account component to it. But if they ever decided they wanted to, because they're still going to work a couple more years, so maybe that Boeing plan they're currently on, they don't like the price of it next year, but they do like the ability to, they want to put some tax-free deductible dollars into a health savings account. Having that Medicare Part A benefit is going to knock you out of being able to do that. So if you are on your employer's plan, you don't need to sign up for Part A. You most likely don't need to sign up for Part B either. You do want to get that confirmed on an individual basis, but in Elliot's case, we determined that going on to Medicare was not going to be cost effective for him because of the Humira. So no need to do anything. Don't worry. The government knows who you are. They also know how old you are. We'll talk about in a moment, after we discuss Sarah, what the process would be for Elliot to hop on to Medicare once he retires. We won't miss a beat.
Absolutely. Elliot's employer's coverage is going to continue to be his primary coverage. And, when he finally decides to leave work, at that point, he'll be given a special enrollment period, and we can have him in. We'll sit down. We'll go over all of the options. We'll get him into the best plan that is going to, keep him.
Suit his needs.
Absolutely. Going to keep him with his doctor and transacting with his physicians in a way that he's used to. Sarah can come on to Medicare, or she can keep her husband's insurance.
Well, what's the math on that?
Well, right now they're paying close to $465 monthly.
Okay.
If they drop Sarah and she goes on to Medicare, that comes out to about $425 a month. So it's a savings of about $40 a month if Sarah goes on to Medicare.
Yeah.
And it comes out to about $500 for the year, $480 for the year. So it's not insignificant. I wouldn't step over it on the street.
Sure. But, here's the thing that a lot of people miss when we are just comparing straight dollars to dollars when we're talking about Medicare versus an employer-based plan. Elliot is able to deduct that $460 a month from his paycheck before he's taxed. So you are able to pay for your employer-based health insurance pre-tax. Medicare, you're paying taxes to receive the benefit. So most likely the savings they would receive, be it that it's under $1,000 a year of premium savings, probably would get eaten up in taxes. It's still okay. It's still a decision Sarah could make. Maybe she likes the idea of the Silver Sneakers or the Renew Active, or there's another benefit that's
supplemental benefit that she really likes.
Exactly. There's something that might be compelling that could really change those numbers. So it does make sense to sit down and have a conversation with someone. As you're approaching 65, one, you want to make sure you're in a position where you won't be assessed a penalty. You might want to hear about what the process is when you do decide to retire so you're prepared, because that's going to be another set of paperwork and enrollment that you're going to want to factor into your timeline and your decision-making when you retire. And then finally, sitting down with a professional will give you the opportunity to take a look at the whole picture. In a lot of cases, when we're evaluating health insurance, people just think about what am I paying every month and what's the most I can pay, what's the worst case scenario looking at those two numbers. So premium and maximum out of pocket. It's a good place to start, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture. Like we just talked about, how is the premium taxed? But secondarily, what benefits are we giving up or adding that could change those numbers? So most likely this is not going to make or break Sarah and Elliot's retirement plan if they save the $400 or not. But it's always nice to know what your options are, and it also gives you a little bit of security and comfort in knowing you made the right decision when you've got another set of eyes on things.
Absolutely. And, they're going to most likely stay, Sarah's going to probably stay with the
employer plan.
Absolutely. That's the impression I was left with. And, even though not a lot was accomplished in this meeting, I feel like a lot was accomplished because they came in and they really had some anxiety about, do I have to, I know I have this birthday coming. Thank you for seeing me, on such short notice. This has really been weighing on me. What exactly is the rule? Because, I'm getting a couple of different
getting conflicting opinions probably from your friends.
Exactly. So, we were able to illuminate the battle space for them so they understand, what their options are, not only now, but they understand what they're going to be going forward when they do decide to leave work and how that transition is going to take place. And, they have a lot more clarity now than when they stepped into the office. And that's always a good thing.
And so for everyone, if you're still working, you're over 65, and you're like, well, what is the process for enrolling in Medicare? Because I didn't do it. What'll happen is, as you approach your retirement date, either you'll want to sit down with a professional. You can always give our office a call, 314-863-0008. Or if you're already working with someone, you're going to want to talk to them about your options, Medicare Advantage versus a supplement. But the initial enrollment process into Medicare is going to work a little bit differently for you because you missed the initial election period, which is that 7 months that surrounds the month that you turn 65. You're going to have that special election period that Rob talked about because you've lost coverage from work. And the very cool thing about Medicare, it's cool, is that Medicare allows for voluntary disenrollment from the plan as a qualifying event, which means you choose when you leave. You didn't necessarily have to get fired in order to receive this benefit, in order to receive the special election. So let's just use Elliot, for example. 2 years from now, when he turns 67, he's going to retire. He wants to retire in June, he decided, because he's going to retire on his birthday at 67. Well, we know because he works for such a large company, the airplane manufacturer, that he's going to have coverage through the end of the month. So June is his birthday. He'll have coverage through the end of June because he's going to retire on his birthday. July 1st, he needs coverage. So when he applies for Medicare, he's going to do it the same way online. He's going to apply for his A and B benefit, but he needs one more form. It's called the Request for Employment Information. And so this is going to be a form that he's going to take to his employer. He's going to take one for himself. And in his case, he's also going to take one for Sarah. And it's going to, which is his wife. It's going to show that He worked from the day he turned 65 until the day he retired. He was on that employer's coverage. He's going to turn that in to Social Security, and Medicare is going to review it. Medicare is going to say, oh, I see Elliot and Sarah had been on qualified coverage from the day they turned 65 until the day Elliot retired, and now they'd like Medicare. They are able to join free of penalty, fee, or issue for that July 1st effective date that they want, as long as they apply in June or beforehand to receive it. And then they'll be able to choose a supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan, whatever they like, no underwriting, just as if they had chosen it yesterday when a few months before they turned 65.
All righty, and we have one text that has come through, and our texter writes, I've heard there is a Medicare package for veterans. Is it a good option? What is your opinion? I've seen on the Medicare Advantage side, some of the carriers have come out with veterans Advantage plans. I haven't been able to sign anyone up into those because when compared against the other plans that the carrier is offering, I just found that this year at least, the other plans were a little bit more robust in how they covered things and what the liabilities were for the enrollee. So I wasn't able to take advantage of them this year, but that doesn't mean I won't be looking at them next year. I most certainly will.
So there are a few things with veteran benefits. One is it depends on what benefits you have. If you just have if you have VA benefits, so you don't have full medical, I agree with Rob. Most of the time, the plans that everyone has access to we usually see superior benefits. But if you are a person that has TRICARE for life, which is essentially full medical benefits that you earned through service. The veterans Medicare Advantage plans sometimes coordinate very nicely with those because essentially what the government is allowing for is that TRICARE for life doesn't have all the fun bells and whistles that the Medicare Advantage plans have. So what the Medicare Advantage plan said was we want to be able to offer, because we also want our money from the government, because Medicare Advantage plans are paid by the number of people enrolled in their plan or one of their plans. So insurance company says we want to be able to provide benefits to individuals that are on TRICARE for life. So the way that they work their benefits is they're going to look at the TRICARE for life benefits and probably raise the copays on the visits to the doctor and copays for your prescriptions because you have access to the TRICARE for life benefits. But then they're going to throw in all the silver sneakers, the vision, dental, hearing,
over the counter
benefits.
Favorite.
They're going to throw all that stuff in. And so now a veteran can pair their TRICARE for life with all the extra bells and whistles that everybody else that's on Medicare using Medicare Advantage plan has access to. So you want to sit down and hear about everything. Also, it's important because this is a really individualized decision. We can talk in generalities about the benefits of the plan, but maybe you're someone that has TRICARE for life, but you don't like using the VA and you want access to a different, more broad network. You still might go with one of the more traditional Medicare Advantage plans that weren't designed for veterans. So there are a lot of moving parts when you're making this decision, which means that, just like Rob said, we tend to see that the general plans are superior on the medical benefits to what we see that are VA, the veterans plan benefits. However, your situation could be slightly different.
And I can tell you for certain that I'm going to keep abreast of all the veteran plans as they drop for the next open enrollment. And, as always, we're going to let the best plan win.
Absolutely.
We're not going to...
We'll talk about them all.
Right. We don't play favorites, and we want what's going to get you the most bang for the buck.
That's right.
And we have another comment that came through. I'm withholding the name on this. And he says, my name is blank blank. My wife and I came in for our quarterly meeting a couple of weeks ago and was able to bring our daughter, and Erin talked to her about doing different things since she was young and just getting started. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, that's really generous and sweet. I love getting to know not only our clients, but family members. I feel like I get to know the family members from afar because, of course, our clients are always talking about their families. But getting to meet them in person, I always find the apples don't fall very far from the tree. So it's nice to get to know everyone.
It really
Put
is.
names to faces.
I don't know how many children of clients you've met with that were either were interested in the field of study, or
already there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. It is really cool to see. It doesn't have to be a family business, but it's like a family trade, or a family. What would be the right word to use? I guess inclination. Like everybody leans in a certain direction. Lots of families that all have different roles in healthcare, or many also have different roles as accountants, tax preparers, things like that. So it's very cool to see.
It is, and I had the pleasure of sitting in on a meeting with your dad with one of our clients, and he brought in his son, who was quite a bit younger than me, who's about, I think, 28 or 29 years old. He had already amassed over $100,000. It was amazing. Like, it really was.
But it wasn't shocking, I'm sure, because when you looked at your mom and dad, it's like, where did you see that? Where'd you learn those financial skills from? Dad
is a power saver, so the apple, as you said, it doesn't fall far. But I just thought that was an incredibly, that's a big number for someone not even 30 yet. So I was pretty impressed, and it was
I always like to
see
the proud parents. That's
he
nice
was beaming.
Too, right?
And
really cool.
I mean, we would be too in that situation.
Yes, we would.
How about we take our first break of the hour?
Let's do it.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more of our stories and your calls and texts right after these brief messages.
This is the Big 550 KTRS St. Louis, Alton, Valley Park, St. Charles, and the world.
Streaming live at KTRS.com.
Are you helping to take care of a senior-aged parents living at home? How many times are you getting a phone call to help them navigate daily tasks, from shopping online to running errands, doctor's appointments? It can be exhausting, and it can be frustrating for everyone. You need to check out Senior Concierge. It's a subscription-style membership dedicated to helping St. Louis area seniors stay connected and confident while living at home. It's as easy as an app, and it's just $79 a month. They'll get access to all the personal concierge support that can assist you with a wide range of needs, from dinner reservations to concerts, sports tickets, home maintenance, groceries, housekeeping, rides to and from the doctors, and so much more. Senior Concierge, convenient, confidence, and connection begins here. Become a member today. Learn more at SeniorCSTL.com. That's SeniorCSTL.com, or call 314-270-7800 or SeniorCSTL.com.
This is Erin, Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email at Erin@jblfinancial.com to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
In April of 1996, a new kind of talk radio for the STL was born. Its name, the Big 550 KTRS. For 3 decades, KTRS has been live and local, not to mention locally owned. Celebrating 30 years and partying all month long. And we want you to be a part of it by texting us to 84126, sharing stories, making new friends, and thanking you for supporting the Big 550 for 30 years. It's all brought to you by Royal Banks of Missouri, Mama's on the Hill, Appliance Discounters, Altair Travel and Cruises, Lacey Lumber, St. Paul GM Country, Window Depot USA of St. Louis, Londoff Chevrolet and Londoff Autoplex, Rufino Painting, Hackett Security, and Delta Investments. This is the Big 550 KTRS, the talk of St. Louis. Depend on it. Depend on Now, back to Straight Talk on Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Welcome back.
Live and local.
That's right, we're here. We're ready to answer your questions, 314-931-5877 or 84126 on the text line.
And we just received a text, and the texter wrote, I did not sign up for Medicare when I turned 65. I am still working. My Medicare premium would be $202.90 per month with a deductible of $283. $202.90 times 12 is $2,434.80. Since January 1st, 2026, my copays with work insurance have been $1,747. I've had several medical procedures this year.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
If my medical premiums would have been less than my copays, would it have been beneficial for a person with medical issues? Also, you have to get your employer to fill out a CMS L564 to prove to Medicare when your employment ended.
So let's answer the easy question first. Yes, that form that you mentioned, the L564 form, that is the request for employment information form. So everyone has to get that filled out if you work past your initial election period. So just
very easy to do. We can provide you one at the office if you work with us. You just hand it to the your HR person. Very easy, very functionary. Probably fill it out in 2 seconds. Hand it right back to you.
That's right.
Not the first one him or her has seen.
Exactly, and you make a perfect point. This does not have to be the president of the company. It just has to be from someone in HR that can verify. Not your friend in HR, most likely, but like a person in HR is designated to do this. They just have to verify that you've been on the coverage. That's what the signature reflects. It's telling Medicare that you had qualified coverage. Now let's go back to the more complicated question of should this individual have taken Medicare instead of their current plan? It's going to be really difficult for me to answer this question because I don't know what plan we would have put them on if they were to elect Medicare.
Comparing that against what they currently have.
Right. But there's a few things that have been left out. And it leads me to believe that you probably made the right decision staying where you are. Our texter is currently comparing out-of-pocket expenses on their current policy, which totaled over $1,700 so far this year in copays, to the Medicare Part B premium, which was going to be about $2,400 a year. Medicare Part B has a premium, but Medicare's not free. So, right, we had the $2,400 of premium plus the $283 of potential deductible depending upon what type of policy you select. We add those together. But in addition to that, there are out-of-pocket expenses with Medicare. It could be drug copays, or if you take a Medicare Advantage plan, it's going to be copays again. But if you take a supplement, you don't have out-of-pocket expenses, you have an additional premium. And for someone 65 in Missouri, Rob, how much is a Plan G about?
Anywhere from $185 to like $210. We'll call it $200 for a nice round number. So add another $2,400.
So,
and that's an escalator. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. Your price when you come on to a supplement plan is going to be a lot different than 5 years on it.
That's a great point. So now let's roll the tape back, so to speak. We've got Medicare Part B at $2,400 a year. Goodness. Maybe one day, hopefully not today. $2,400 a year for Medicare Part B, $2,400 a year for a supplement. So that's $4,800 a year that you would pay. That's the healthiest year of your life or the sickest year of your life. It sounds like our texter is having, I don't know if it's not the greatest year, but it could be average to below average, we'll call it, because we're not just seeing, he's had several medical procedures. So now let's take that $1,700. Looks pretty good, $4,800 versus $1,700. We still don't know how much our texter is paying as a payroll deduction for his health insurance every month, but my guess is, using our rough numbers, if we say his expense on Medicare would have been at least $4,800 for the year, his current known expense that we have is about $1,700. As long as your annualized deductions from your payroll to cover your health insurance did not exceed $3,100, which, over 12 months, that's as long as you're not paying $260 a month for your employer's coverage, then you came out ahead. If you're paying $260 a month, you broke even. If you're paying more than that, maybe it would have made sense for you to hop onto Medicare. But this is a great mathematical example of why a lot of times it doesn't make sense.
I love as always, I prefer numbers and the stories that they tell, and we get them on the board and we find out which side of the board wins.
That's right. In our opinion, almost every single person is going to end up on Medicare eventually. So if you wait a year or two, it's okay, right? You're on a plan that's going to be more cost effective for you. You can wait, and so can Medicare. So make sure that you're, making the cost effective decision.
As long as you've got that credible coverage and you're going to continue to work, you are certainly free to do so. And, many of our clients that are continuing to work, they absolutely love the plans that they have at work.
Sure.
And, they're just coming, like Elliot and Sarah. They just basically came in to find out that they weren't going to shoot themselves in the foot.
I find that finance and fitness have a lot in common because we all have to live our lives in it, right? You have to move your body and eat. You could do it well or poorly. It doesn't matter, but you still have to do it in order to function. We all have to use money in some way or another to live in our current society. You could be good at it or you could be not so great at it. And that tends to make everyone an expert. So as you're approaching Social Security age, as you're approaching Medicare eligibility, everyone seems to have an opinion on what you should do because what they did either was the best or the worst thing that's ever happened.
Oh, and when it's the best thing, you always have to understand it was the best for them.
Right. And when it's the worst, it could have been the worst just for them. Or it's a great cautionary tale of a pitfall to avoid. But no one's situation is identical. And so that means I would always suggest that when you are making these decisions that you're working with someone that is a professional or you're working with someone that's willing to take responsibility, which generally means they're a professional. When we give advice, we have a responsibility to stand by that advice, and we also have to take responsibility if something happens. Most of the time, your doctors are not going to pay your Medicare premiums for you, so you don't necessarily want them telling you which health insurance plan to select unless they're going to, which would be probably don't give their name out because they won't have many patients, or friends who aren't going to take responsibility for what they tell you to do. So,
and it's not even that the advice that you're getting is necessarily wrong. It's just that that advice
specialized
could be
to you.
Exactly. It could be conditioned for their personal needs and not yours, and that could leave you without a chair when the music stops and keep
or just not getting the same result. Like, hey, friend, you said this was the greatest thing that ever happened, and it's okay. It's just not great. So.
Right. Exactly. Do you want to take our second break? We're just speed running the second hour here. We're already 45 minutes into it, or 42 minutes into it.
Well, now that we've brought it up, why don't we take our second break? And when we get back, we'll be here to answer more of your calls. So please, we would love to hear from you. 314-931-5877, or keep the text coming, 84126 on the text line. We'll be right back.
550 KTRS St. Louis, Alton, Valley Park, St. Charles, and the world.
Streaming live at KTRS.com.
Can I get serious for a moment? Something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is my front yard and taking care of your front yard. Because when you drive by someone's house and it's full of weeds, you think to yourself, oh man, it's very, very simple. You know how much I love to pretend to be a yard dork. You know what I use? Fertilome. I go to fertilome.com and I type in my zip code, and a whole host of local independent lawn and garden dealers show up. I buy the crabgrass preventer plus lawn food. It's the spring application. I get it down on my yard as soon as possible, and that greens up my yard and keeps the weeds away. So it makes me look like I know what I'm doing. But really, all I'm doing is getting Fertilome and putting it on my front yard. And that will take care of my yard for many, many, many weeks, and it go a long way to having the greenest yard in the block. So this spring, you want to green up your yard and get rid of the weeds? It all starts at Fertilome or fertilome.com.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
At Midland, we know sometimes all it takes is a moment for an idea to spark, or to make it happen, a moment to find your dream, or build one, a moment to start your forever, or at least start planning for it. Whatever moments you have, Midland is here for them and can help you make them. Midland, brighter together. Visit us at midlandsb.com. Midland States Bank is member FDIC.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 5 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Welcome back, everyone, to our final segment of our show this morning.
Went really fast.
It really did. You know, the sun is out. It's warming up. Spring has sprung.
And it really went so smoothly because we have the best listeners in the world, and they're very engaged, and we love their engagement because, you know, what's more important is what's on their minds,
That's
not
right.
what's on ours.
Yeah, we got to answer your questions. I'm sure we got a few more.
Yes, we do.
Oh,
and
that's great.
Our next texter writes, when a person takes a supplement plan, do they get a Medicare withdrawal taken out of their Social Security and the supplement deduction? Well,
yes. So first, you're absolutely correct. Medicare Part B always comes out of your Social Security, but the supplement can't, right?
Right.
So you have to pick a different mode of payment there. You can pay monthly, annually, quarterly through a deduction from a checking account. I even believe that some insurers will allow you to pay by credit card now, but you are paying two separate premiums.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare Part B. So Medicare is not free. Medicare is the most expensive thing any of us have ever purchased in our lives in regards to health insurance. You're paying for it every single paycheck while you're working. When you leave work and you join Medicare, you're going to start paying for it again when you take your Medicare Part B and pay premium. That's only 80% of your medical expenses. We still need to fill that 20% gap that Medicare leaves for us through either a supplement, which means you are paying the full premium for that. You're taking the full responsibility. The insurance company is going to come in and pick up any of your out-of-pocket expenses for you, but you're taking a monthly liability and saying, I'm going to pay the insurance company every single month, just like any other type of coverage. Or you can say, I want to fill that last 20% with a Medicare Advantage plan, and I only want to pay when I actually use the coverage. I still get comprehensive coverage, but I'm only paying when I actually use services. These are still expenses. So that means that no matter how you elect your Medicare benefits, you are going to pay. So it's not free, which is unfortunate, but it is the case.
No, and I just like where I can't read our texter's mind on this, but I can see the wheels are turning and he's adding
like,
up.
What the heck?
He's like, he's adding up the yearly expense for the Medicare Part B, and then he's stacking on that, and then he's going, whoa.
Well, right. In our last texter example, who was so generous to give us the full math on
yes.
a big chunk of the math, that really you saw us do it in real time. $4,800 for our Medicare expenses if we took a supplement versus the $1,700 of out-of-pocket expenses he currently experienced. Plus, we didn't know what the premium was, so that was the only variable that we didn't have. But you can see quickly that Medicare is not necessarily... Medicare is fantastic. It is probably some of the most comprehensive coverage most of us will have in our lives, but it's not inexpensive. So in many cases, employer-based coverage might not be the best coverage you've ever had, but it oftentimes is the least expensive coverage because, one, you get to pay for it pre-tax. Second, you have your employer in most cases assisting you with the premium, so you are not footing the whole bill.
I think we're going to rename our Medicare segment Freedom Isn't Free segment.
Didn't mean to bring everyone down on this beautiful sunny Saturday, but you got to be prepared.
Yeah, know before you go.
Free isn't always free.
Yeah. The Freedom Chronicles, Part 2. And our next texter writes, greetings, is there a difference in the type of stocks and securities you should hold in an IRA account versus a regular taxed account for someone in retirement? Thank you. Great question.
This is a great question. Not only do you want to consider what you own across your full portfolio, it is a good idea to consider where you should own these things. Now, in a pre-tax, a traditional IRA account, every dollar that comes out is going to be taxable to you. So putting high growth things in there, you're just going to pay taxes on the growth, but you didn't pay taxes on the original contributions either. So we know 100% of that's taxable. Dividends and interest, you're not going to get any preferred treatment if they're inside of your traditional IRA, because everything that comes out of an IRA is going to be subject to ordinary income tax. So just think about it like every dollar that comes out, throw it on top of the income you already have. That's how we determine what your taxable amount is going to be for the year. After-tax accounts are a little different, right? Because initial investments are your basis. You don't pay taxes on that. We pay taxes on growth, and then if you make sales in the account, so long or short-term capital gains.
Or if you had a mutual fund and an after-tax account, there could be some follow-through.
Pass-through, yes.
Pass-through gains that you'll have, even though you didn't make a sale, you'll have a taxable event.
That's right. You get to participate in the manager's taxable events, essentially. So if you're owning mutual funds outside of an IRA account, you may see that you have some long or short-term capital gains on your 1099, and you're like, I didn't sell anything. The person that is managing the fund that you purchased or your advisor purchased, they did. So you get to participate in part of that. So that's a good point. So in our minds, you want to consider, first, we want to try to keep our after-tax dollars after tax, meaning we want to keep those taxes low. So holding things that you want to appreciate over time but aren't necessarily selling is a good place to hold in your after-tax account. Not using mutual funds in your after-tax account, but instead considering things like ETFs, individual securities, depending upon your risk tolerance, that are not going to create those pass-through events. You're just going to pay taxes when you make decisions. I'm selling this. I am aware of it. I've done it in, either long or short-term capital gains consequences. So you have a little bit more control. Owning mutual funds inside of IRA accounts is smart because you get the benefit of active management, but you do not have to pay taxes on the pass-through. You only pay taxes when you're making distributions from that account. Those are generalities. When you're considering where to hold investments, are you making any withdrawals right now? What do you already have in your after-tax account? We're not going to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, let's start over again and pay taxes so we don't have to pay taxes in the future, right? But how can we unwind some of the things that are in our after-tax account? Let's just use an example. Let's say that, you've got an IRA account that has about $100,000 in it, $1 million in it rather, and you've got an after-tax account that has $500,000 in it, so your net worth's about $1.5 million, and you need a monthly income above and beyond your Social Security benefit. At $500,000, if your advisor, let's say, or you through the course of time, because maybe you've inherited some of this, we have many families that have quite a bit of utilities, ones that used to be very local to St. Louis, in their after-tax accounts, either because they've inherited it or it's a family thing to own some of our local utilities. They pay dividends. The average dividend on the S&P 500 is about, we talked about it earlier, 1.4. So I'll give everybody 2%, right?
You're very generous.
I'll be generous and say at 2%, what's 2% of $500,000?
2% of $500,000 would be $10,000.
You're going to have $10,000 of dividends, which you're going to pay taxes on if they reinvest or go to cash. We said, how much does our example need? We need $2,000 a month above and beyond Social Security. So at $10,000, we have almost $1,000 a month available to us from dividends and interest. Why get rid of the dividend producing security? Let's just, instead of reinvesting it, let's have it go to cash. You live off of the dividend for part of it, and then we start taking distributions from the IRA account to make up the difference. We don't need to sell the dividend producers or move them to another account. We want to just start utilizing them.
And, anecdotally, I've sat in meetings with your dad where clients have been retired now for a hot minute, and they have retirement accounts that they don't touch because they don't need to make withdrawals from these accounts to make their life work other than required minimum distributions. So they're basically growing them for the grandkids.
Sure.
So they're a little bit more aggressive in their allocations than they otherwise would be if they needed that portfolio to deliver results that they needed to
Sure.
make their life work. So it's just
That's a great point, too. I automatically think when we're talking about investments, we're talking about the investor, but maybe that investor isn't investing for themselves any longer. If you're in a position where one of your accounts or a lot of your assets, you're no longer investing for yourself, then of course we can take a completely different approach to how we're going to invest, because now the long term is multi-generational. It's not just ensuring that you have the income that you need on a monthly basis.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of our clients have really taken to your dad's 3-layered cake with the scoop. And how we pass assets on to people in the most tax efficient manner. So
right. We spent a lot of time at the beginning of the show talking about the Secure Act and how it changed distribution requirements from beneficiary IRAs. Well, that change was well planned because right now, we're already experiencing some of the largest wealth transfer. We're in the middle of the largest wealth transfer in the history of our country as older baby boomers are starting to pass away and leave assets to their children. And as that generation, unfortunately, continues to get older and we see that those assets starting to pass, baby boomers are the first generation that's had to amass their own wealth in order to be able to retire, because most did not retire with pensions and Social Security. Most people retired with Social Security benefits. So now we have large IRA accounts that are being passed to the next generation. Well, now the government says, not so fast. We'd like our taxes much faster than originally, because for many of our listeners right now, you probably inherited the house and maybe some CDs and a little cash, a car from your parents. You didn't inherit maybe $500,000, $600,000, $1 million in IRA assets.
Didn't exist back then.
It's very possible that your children are going to inherit that, if not more, from you. The government planned it to be able to receive their tax dollars much faster by requiring those beneficiaries to liquidate those accounts within 10 years instead of over the course of their lives. So how do we change our planning strategy to help your family keep more of your wealth and have less of it go to the government? One of those ways is to consider who we are passing which assets to. Just like it's important to consider what assets you are holding in what type of accounts, it's also important to consider what type of account you're leaving to which family members or which institutions. IRA assets are great for charity. They're great for younger family members. They're great for individuals that are we've had clients that have family members in the clergy. They don't pay taxes. It's a good place to that's where some of your IRA assets are being beneficiary to. Older beneficiaries are better. Higher income earning beneficiaries, better to leave your after-tax assets to. They get a step up in basis, no taxes. Doesn't mean you're leaving different amounts of money to people. It just means you could be leaving the same amount. It's just taxed differently and it's passed differently. Different requirements.
All right, and I think this is going to be our last text question. Our texter writes, I have several securities in my portfolio that I no longer have the cost basis of. What does that mean?
Nothing good, unfortunately.
The way the IRS views these situations is that the entire
cost basis
is
zero.
Right.
So if you can't prove your cost basis, the government will help you prove it by saying you owe taxes on everything. So most likely this is an asset you do not want to sell outright. My suggestion would be, the first thing to start would be have dividends and interest go to cash if it is a dividend producing security. This is also something you can donate. If you donate it, you donate at the fair market value at the day that you make the donation. You get the deduction, and the 501c3 does not pay taxes.
And I would just jump in here quickly to say, do not gift it because you're just handing someone the same issue that you currently have.
Correct. Gifting the security does not change or re-record the cost basis. Now you've just passed on an asset that has no cost basis to someone. They inherit your cost basis of zero.
If you leave it to someone and they inherit it, that's when they get the cost base. They get a jump up to the cost basis at the time of your demise.
That's right. Don't forget to tune in to us next week, 9 to 11, for more Straight Talk on retirement.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Be listening next week at 9 for more Straight Talk on Retirement with your retirement coaches, Jeff and Erin Lapidus, on the Big 550 KTRS.